Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen. I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, played 11 seasons for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. Come to you twice a week to talk hockey, cooking, and lots of other things in Tom Laidlaw's world and my world. And we'll start a little bit on Monday. We talked about how my family outing, gathering, all the people coming in was falling apart, and of course that did indeed happen. After my wife was ill last week with COVID, now my daughter now has it, and she had already exposed a couple of the family members to it because she didn't know she was positive, and then right after she tested positive, she was very ill. So that's been canceled, and I ended up as the great irony is that of course as Murphy's Law, when this all came down, my daughter's husband was out of town for work, so there was really no place to take the kids. I had been exposed to Aaron, so I'm now officially kind of quarantining. So the person who was in the best position to watch them was actually my wife, who on that very Monday was said to be no longer contagious. Okay. So I had this long trip. I had to take one daughter to the airport, which unfortunately was the opposite way of my my lake house. And then I took her there. It's a 20-minute drive, and then 20, back. So I go past my house again. So I've added 40 minutes to the trip, and it's 2 hours plus, and of course the roads are tore up, so it takes 3:45. So I'm basically on a 7-hour forced drive getting my grandkids there, and I'm a little I don't usually get too stressed out by these things. I see as more of an inconvenience and stuff, but I was kind of down about it all. And as I'm driving, my grandson took a little nap in the back seat, as did my granddaughter. Archer's 4 years old, and he wakes up and he's got a question, and it's really out of left field. First of all, he makes the pronouncement that
Kevin, sorry to interrupt you, Kevin. I love the way you tell these stories. Seriously, I just very good.
Yeah. And he's got a question for me. Well, first he makes a declarative statement. He wants to know whether I know that flamingos have legs so long that they can reach the bottom of the ocean.
So he just wakes up. He just wakes up and announces this.
Wakes up out of a dead sleep. So he's ready to go now. And I said, well, the ocean's pretty deep, Archer. I'm not sure even the long-legged flamingo can get his legs all the way down. Even if he's on his tippy toes, I'm not sure he could reach the bottom of the ocean. So he thought about it for just a few seconds, and he said, well, maybe they're long enough to reach the bottom of the pond by my house. Well, I said, yeah, no, you're onto something, Archer. I think that's true. I think the flamingo can reach the bottom of your pond. That's probably 2 or 3 feet deep. And so then he wasn't done. And he says, Peepa, that's what he calls me. Peepa. Yeah, Peepa. Can flamingos swim? And, I know Mickey Lolich won 3 games in the 68 World Series. I know that Gordie Howe was 52 years old when he played in the NHL. I know a lot about history. I got a lot of facts about presidents. I can do math in my head, but I got no idea whether flamingos can swim. And so, I try to be logical, and I say, well, kind of birds kind of fly and fish kind of swim. So maybe a flamingo can't swim. And right away he says, yeah, but ducks fly and they swim. You got me there. You got me there. Yeah. So I said what I always say. Well, your grandmother will know the answer to those questions. Can you still see me?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, for some reason you just disappeared. But I said, your grandmother or your mother, because those are the subjects that they talk to my grandson about. That's one of the when I think about my wife and with grandkids, what I think about is she takes my 2-year-old and she goes outside at the lake house and 2-year-old granddaughter and puts her on the table and sets her right in front of her, and those two carry on conversations. And they talk about bugs and birds and flowers and all those kinds of things. But when Archer and I talk, we talk about Superman's X-ray vision. We talk about whether if you get bit by a spider, whether you would have Spider-Man powers, those are the things with comic books, baseball cards, those are the kind of things we talk about. So I knew his grandmother would help him out. Now, I actually looked that up, and this is not the important part of the story, but I'll throw this out there because I know you like things like what was the critter that was trying to get through Canadian customs that you were so fascinated?
The turtle. Holtby's turtle. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, this is like that. First of all, do you think flamingos can swim?
I was going to say yes. I was thinking about it. I'm going to say yes.
You're darn right they can swim. Yeah, yes. Because they've got webbed feet. Yeah. And they swim on the surface if the water's too deep and they're looking to chow down. But while I was looking that up because I wanted to be able to tell my grandson when I see him next, in case he forgets to ask his grandma, because that goes into his brain and then it's gone. Yeah. But if you bring him back up to him, you'll remember him. Yeah. But what I discovered when I was looking that up is, do you know flamingos not only like to fly, but you know what altitude they like to fly at? 10,000 to 15,000 feet.
Oh, wow. I was going to say 1,000 to 2,000 feet. Wow. Oh,
they like to fly at between 10 and 15,000 feet. Oh, wow. That just floored me. Like, who knew? Who knew that there's flamingos, flying around up there? But, the moral of that story was, when I was done talking about flamingos with my grandson, I was no longer stressed and upset by all this. You're just thinking, we're still the Allen family, whether we're together or not. It's like not the end of the world just because, COVID is a wily rascal and, kind of got in our way. So anyway, everybody's home. My daughter went back to South Carolina. Aaron's the one in South Carolina, correct? No, Kelsey's in South Carolina, but Aaron's the one who has with COVID, and she's here locally. And she wasn't doing very well the first 2 days with it. It's, she's been pretty sick. It's a pretty, again, it's all relative. This is not like I feel like I got to go to the hospital sick, but it's, certainly, it's a little worse than the flu. She just feels just awful. So. Right. So anyway, but I've got hockey to discuss too. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, would you guys ever do a family thing virtually or just not do it at all?
No, we do those pretty regularly. Like I haven't participated very often with these, but my kids watch movies together. Oh. Like they watch things on television while they're all connected on Zoom. So, you can still comment on the movies and, everyone gets the same snacks and, that kind of
very good.
stuff.
I like that.
Yeah. But anyway, what I want to talk about, because it occurred to me, we didn't really go and as far as we could have gone into discussions about, free agency and what happened in baseball, I think leads to another question about hockey. I don't know whether you paid attention. I know you're not a big baseball fan, but Juan Soto was traded. He's 23 years old, and he's 2.5 years from unrestricted free agents. And Washington didn't even wait. They didn't wait till they got within a year. They just moved him now. He's not staying. He's going to go, and no one wants to work or play for the Nationals. They're just getting him out of here and doing it now. And I think, is that where we're headed? Where, if you're the Calgary Flames or you're the Winnipeg Jets, or, if you're, I don't know, there are the smaller markets. Once you get a player, you just have to count on the fact that, we're not going to be able to convince them to stay. Up until the Blue Jackets signed Johnny Gaudreau, we would have said that. And it wasn't. Salary cap supposed to change all that? Because it doesn't seem like it does. So,
well, I think the mentality of the players has changed a lot too. In the past, I remember, it really wasn't the thought process of the players. Like, I want to get out of this city. It's like, okay, this is the team that drafted me or traded for me. This is the team I'm with, and I'm going to stay here. But I think more and more now, players' rights or their knowledge of the rights and their ability to use those rights has really changed. So, where did Juan Soto go, by the way?
They traded him to the Padres.
Oh, Padres. Okay, good. So, and I think, as you know, so the attractive thing for a Juan Soto situation is that he does have 2.5 more years left on his contract. So that ups his value in my mind for any other team that's going to sign him, right? Because now they're saying, okay, this isn't just like a rental player. We've got him for 2.5 years. We think we're a good club. He's going to help us win hockey games. So I guess to answer your question, I think we could go there. But I guess it's got to depend on the city too. Like if it's a city like a Columbus, whose fan base, is loyal, but maybe smaller, right? And you're worried about putting people in the seats. If you now farm off or you get rid of all your really attractive players that make you a better team, well, your season ticket sales are going to plummet too. It makes sense that they would anyways. If you're the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens, maybe you don't have to worry about that as much because people are lining up to get tickets. So it's a great question. And I think, more and more that kind of stuff happens. Teams are saying, we can't afford to just give this guy up. Although there is in the salary cap world, there is some people, although I think they don't want to just lose a player for nothing. They do look at it that they're gaining cap space. So they've lost the player, but now they've got cap space. Now, we've had this discussion. I can see the look in your face. You still have to go use that cap space, right? Yeah.
Well, that's the problem. That cap space is, I agree with you. Cap space is an asset. I remember actually our good friend Brian Burke talking very passionately about that, saying, it's an asset. It's very valuable to you because, and we saw that with Calgary. But if you can't attract players to come to your city, of what use is it? So,
right. And players get smarter, like all the tax issues too. Obviously the teams in Dallas and Florida, they don't have state tax. You go back up to Canada, 50% of your contract is gone through taxes. So it's there's a lot of factors to it.
But let's look at this realistically. So, you get $1 million for a contract, and if you go to Michigan, you're paying an income tax of 7 or 8%. So that's $80,000 of that $1 million. I don't know. Is that? I guess.
But you're looking at a $10 million player. That's $800,000, right?
Yeah, it's $800,000. But if you're making $10 million, is that enough to go to a place you don't want to go?
Well, correct. Yeah, if it's just a place you don't want to go, but if everything else is equal or close to being equal, like Steven Stamkos' situation in Tampa, for instance, when he signed, I'm sure he took probably less than he thought he could get someplace else or knew he could get someplace else because he ultimately tried the free agency route. But he knows he's not paying as much state tax. So maybe, again, I don't know the exact numbers in his case, but maybe he signed for 9.5. Maybe he was getting an offer of 10.5 from somebody else, but because there's no state tax in Florida, it became equal and he wanted to stay in the same place. I think there's a lot of, I just think it's more the players are much more educated. Again, they've got agents that educate them as well, but they're much more willing to move. Like Johnny Gaudreau, he'd been a Calgary Flame. Again, he's an American-born player. Again, I don't know his mentality. Did he want to get out of Calgary because he wanted to get someplace in the States? I don't know. But, I just don't remember that stuff as much in the past when players would leave a city that they got drafted by and were playing with. It was more like that was their team and they're going to stay with it. So,
well, to me, it used to be when you wanted out, you wanted to go to a team that could win. But now it's harder to figure out which of those teams are going to win. There's too many teams, and there's a little more balance than there was. I remember when I first started covering the National Hockey League in the 80s, you could identify the 4 or 5 teams that were the real favorites. And now it's really hard to do that. You can a little bit, but that certain teams are going to be good, but it's not shocking to you if the 16th team in the playoffs ends up in the finals.
Maybe Montreal when they went to the finals. Yeah.
Right. Just because that's kind of the difference between the top and the middle, and the 16 is really right at the middle now. Yeah. That's hard to believe, but so anyway, well, I think it's an interesting situation that we have developing in pro sports because I think that's hard on fan bases that you're going to lose. It was one thing when you were losing them because your team wasn't good enough. But now you're just losing them because your team has a stigma, or players don't want to stay there, or there are just a lot more complications to it.
Well,
So,
and the other day, that Saturday, when I was at the NHL Booster Club convention over in Terrytown, you get up close and personal. Those people, those are diehard fans for their team. Yeah, they take it real personally. They view it that's their team. So some player doesn't want to play for their team. Yeah, that hurts them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's certainly a complicated situation, and but I think you see more and more teams now like looking at as part of the master plan. Okay, when are those players going to become free agents? And like you said, you get more out of them if you can trade them with some term left.
Right. And that's why the scouts and the development people are so important for teams now too, like to draft the right players and then have a situation with the club where they really come in and they're developed properly even before they get to the team. It's the physical training and the knowledge of the game, understanding the team systems, all those things. That's huge. Like you can't just draft a player and say, okay, show up. And nowadays it's really that those players are valuable, those young players, obviously, because they're now on an entry level system, so they're making a lot less money, hurts your cap less, and now you've got to develop them properly. And I think you're going to see more and more. I guess as we talk it through, we will see more and more of that, where you're okay because of the cap, especially now with the flat cap. Now it's not going to stay flat; it's going to eventually start going back up again. But those young players now get better. Your team now gets closer to winning, and you see it all the time. Chicago Blackhawks several years ago. Now the players are worth more money because they're older and they've won and they're experienced, and you can't afford to pay everybody. So now you've got to get rid of some players. So I guess, now that we talk about it, I guess it's kind of, well, it hasn't happened like to the extent of Soto where it's 2.5 years before his free agency. But you think back like the Dustin Bufflins, it was such a big part of the Chicago Blackhawks. After they won, they had to trade him, right? Because he was just, so Tampa Bay is going through it right now.
Yeah, I mean, boy, their depth has just been so eroded. Like they still have a really nice collection of players, but when you've reached the point that you weren't able to re-sign Andre Palat, for example, like now you're chipping into the not just the depth, but he's one of their. To me, he was one of their important players.
Yeah, character players too. Yeah, as the one, I agree. Hey, here's some news. Of course, Susan comes up with this. Who says, rest in peace, Bill Russell, Vince Scully, two of the best. That is sad. It's amazing the way people talk about Vince Scully, too, right? It's not just how great he was, but it's like the kind of person he was and everything, too. So I saw some pictures where he was at the White House getting awarded something, too. But.
Yeah, I mean, he was, terrific. I mean, he's sort of, I would say the comparison with him in hockey would be Mike Emmerich, at least in terms of, the adulation and reverence that people had for him. Very endearing. And his baseball, call was almost poetic, for lack of a better term.
His voice was something like he just so distinctive, right? With his voice.
For sure.
Who used to do it for Hockey Night in Canada many years ago? It's awful. Dick Irvin and
Dick Irvin, right?
Yeah, same kind of voice, right? You just remember that voice.
Yeah, no, but I mean that you become, it's interchangeable in terms of, it's a high Danny Gallivan, Hockey Night in Canada, Danny Gallivan, they're one and the same, like you can't, separate them. And
isn't that true? Like with Hockey Night in Canada, they had the old song, the and then they lost the rights to that, and it wasn't over a whole lot of money too. That some family owned the rights to that, and they were renegotiating, and they changed it. I remember thinking to myself, "What? You can't? You have to have that song for Hockey Night in Canada."
Yeah, I mean, watching hockey, I lived obviously in a border state in Michigan, so I was able to watch Hockey Night in Canada, and it was almost a religious experience. Saturday night, especially at playoff time, and just the way, I mean, local broadcasts had not reached the level of sophistication that you had with Hockey Night in Canada. I mean, it was just felt like, you were really in the playoffs. I mean, I remember being a kid and looking in the TV guide. Of course, there's no such animal these days, but trying to figure out, making sure that I was right on top of going to be able to watch the It seems like Boston was always involved in the ones I was watching. But the making sure you were going to be right there for the action, and I loved overtime. And I was not a person that I could stay up till midnight or 1 o'clock and go to school the next day. I had no problems with that. Right. So when I was in high school.
That was one of the things when you first turned pro, growing up around Toronto, watching Hockey Night Canada, so mainly Maple Leaf Gardens, but also the Montreal Forum, the Boston Garden, Chicago Stadium, Detroit. When you go to play in those buildings after you watched Hockey Night Canada as a kid, you remember sitting at home on the couch with your parents on Saturday night watching Hockey Night Canada. Then you're out there playing, and it really, you have to like smack yourself a little bit, like wake up. You're caught up in the whole moment. Yeah.
Well, even as a sports writer, to me, one of the neat things is I was able to cover games in all the original 6 teams, 6 arenas except Olympia. But I went to games at that. I just didn't cover any in that because it was gone by the time I started my career. But I did see games there. I saw playoff games there and so forth. So. And I loved all those. The same thing. I view Mellon Arena, the Igloo. I put that right up there with the original 6 in terms of what it meant to me. I covered a lot of games in that arena, it was an easy drive for me from Michigan. It's only 4 hours and change. And I got tired of being on planes, so any excuse I had to go to Pittsburgh, I would do it just so I would. You know
what I think of when I think of Mellon Arena or the Igloo? You know what I think about? Chips Ahoy cookies. Chips Ahoy cookies.
Why is that?
So the visiting team always there's a guy that works in the visiting team's locker room. As an older gentleman, I can't remember his name, and he would always bring a bag of Chips Ahoy cookies. Really nice older gentleman. We really get to know him. Played a lot of games there. So Chips Ahoy cookies. So I think of the Igloo.
Yeah, you think too that we've advanced now, like nutrition is so much a big part of it. Like you talked about the development of players, and the Red Wings had their development camp. I went down to it, and one of their sessions there for all their prospects is that you meet with the nutritionist, the team nutritionist, and of course they talk about it. And most of these kids are pretty well up on it. I remember talking to Sebastian Cosa, the goalie prospect, who's a first round pick, and he said, "Yeah, I've been working on nutrition for a couple of years. So it's, we're just sort of reinforcing what I already know. But, at 15, you didn't know anything about nutrition. I'm pretty sure.
No.
So
I just ate everything and anything that was in front of my face. Yes. That was it.
Well, yeah. But I was watching the Detroit Tigers game last night, and they were mentioning that one of the pitchers on the team that they had seen him, he came in and pitched an inning. The broadcaster said, yeah, and I saw him 3 hours before the game, his pregame meal was 2 Twinkies and a Coke. Yeah, I know. So some guys still,
the amazing thing was there's sometimes before a game, if Wayne Gretzky was hungry, I could see him eating a cheeseburger. Like you go for warm-ups, he was hungry to have a cheeseburger, and then go out and score 5 goals. So,
I think on an intermittent basis, I don't think what you eat really matters unless you eat something that makes you sick and you can't really function. But I think it's over, a period of time you've got to make sure. So
I've learned, and I didn't realize before, your diet, if you eat the proper diet, your energy level is just way better too. If you eat bad foods, it's just
they're sluggish. But Bernie Nichols tells me, he and Wayne were really tight when they were on the Kings, and they would often eat lunch together. And when he first started, when the first time Wayne invited him out, he said, yeah, let's go to lunch. And he said, I was expecting we'd go to a trendy, Southern California restaurant. And all of a sudden we get out and Wayne just keeps walking like he's just not even going to his car. And I'm going, where the hell are we going? And he just walked over to the McDonald's. And, they'd sit down and have a couple of quarter pounders with cheese. And, that was Wayne's idea of lunch. He didn't want to.
I can attest to that too. We were leaving Winnipeg one time on the bus, and we were all hungry after practice. When I think we were going to the airport, Wayne pulled the bus over to McDonald's, and then we got McDonald's sandwiches. So, yeah.
Did you guys always eat what Wayne wanted to eat, or could you have stood up?
Not always.
I'd like to go to Arby's today. Could you say that to Wayne? So,
and you know what? If you were to do that, he would probably say, "Let's go to Arby's." But nobody ever did that. If Wayne says we're going to McDonald's, we're going to McDonald's.
Yeah. No, knowing Wayne, he would do that. He would not want to bend the team to his will. He'd say, "Does everyone want to go to Arby's?" Because he's a classy man. So
and he's smart enough to understand that team dynamic too. That it can't be just Wayne's team, although it could be just Wayne's team. But he wanted to make sure all the guys knew that it was a team.
It wasn't just Wayne's team; it was Wayne's league. I mean, there should have been a tax on every team. Everyone should have had to pay a Wayne Gretzky tax because he raised the level. Like it's really no different than Tiger Woods in golf. Yeah. And the smart golfers all realize that, and a lot of them do. You say that, like I've heard McIlroy talking about it, and he's actually too young to have really benefited. But he just said, Tiger Woods is the reason we're all playing for huge prizes, right now, and and a lot of those guys understand that. Well, that's how it was with Wayne. Wayne changed everything.
We could go into St. Louis on a Tuesday night, and the building would be packed because Wayne was there.
Right. I mean, Wayne. There should have been a Wayne Gretzky tax that every team played, because all of a sudden people didn't. Sometimes he couldn't name 3 NHL teams, but they knew who the best player was. They knew it was Wayne Gretzky.
That's interesting you're talking about that, because I remember the feeling when I got drafted there, got traded there. We had the old purple and gold jerseys, and we had a good team. It was really good. Luke Robitaille, Jimmy Carson, Jay Wells, Mark Hardy, all those guys. But nobody seemed to care about it. So we'd go on the road, and it was almost like, all right, people aren't even paying attention to the game. Then it's just like the switch went off, and Wayne get traded there. It was like the whole atmosphere at home, all the movie stars there and everything, and I traveling on the road. It was quite a change. Yeah, it is funny listening about that. They're thinking about that too. Yeah, that is good. It's cool.
It also helps. Like I've thought about this a lot. Not only was Wayne Gretzky and Gordie Howe and Bobby Orr like great players, but they had great names. Like just imagine if Bobby Orr's name was John Smith. And Wayne Gretzky was Michael Jones, and Gordie Howe, was Scott Anderson. Scott Anderson.
Scott Anderson. That's true. That's a good point. Bobby Orr,
but Wayne Gretzky, like that's a name. You can hang your hat on that name.
Bobby Orr too. Bobby Orr's got a great. Oh yeah.
Bobby Orr, I mean, those are names. Those are real names. Like, So
who else did that get? Mary Lemieux's pretty good too, right? Mary Lemieux.
Yeah, I'll tell you one that defeats that whole idea though is Michael Jordan.
You don't like Michael Jordan? Oh,
But Michael Jordan is not that uniqueness. But I tell you what is MJ.
MJ,
yeah. People talk about
Larry Bird up there. How do you feel about Larry Bird?
Oh, Larry Bird's a name. Yeah.
How about Tom Brady? Tom Brady, you like that one?
No, I mean, Tom Brady, I think, succeeded despite his name. It's too plain. I mean, I'm just saying, when you've got both, when you've got the name that sort of is befitting. I mean, like Yogi Berra when he was playing, Mickey Mantle. Mantle. I mean, come on. Like, that's just perfect.
But how about these guys that have these kind of nicknames as adults? Like, what's the football guy that was doing broadcasting? Booger McFarland? Like,
yeah.
Booger? His name's Booger. That's like, who else? Well, I give Boomer Esiason a hard time too. Now, there's a reason why, but Boomer is not his real name. But apparently, he lost his mother when he was very young, and when he was in the womb, he was kicking all the time. So his mother named him Boomer. So that one, that's all right. We'll let it pass.
Yeah, I like that nickname, Boomer Esiason. So
Boomer, yeah. Yeah, but do you in general, like adult men having a nickname as their go-to name?
It just depends on what it is. I think it's like Bubba. I'm not particularly fond of, but I think you got to be careful when you nickname your kids. But my son's name is Shane, but he became known as Shaner to his friends, and still as an adult. And in our family, you still hear it. And we actually have another Shane who married one of my daughters. So we have 2 Shanes. And so it's been a lot easier for us to say Shane than Shane.
Right. And my son is named Shane. My oldest son is named Shane as well. Although I spelled it Shayne. How did you spell yours?
just the normal SHANE. But that differentiates in written form, but not when you're speaking it. So yeah, I guess it depends on what the nickname is. So
yeah, you get me thinking about all these names now with athletes, like what fits and what doesn't fit. Like, is there a name for an athlete that just doesn't fit? How about Larry Playfair? That's a good one. Larry Playfair. He didn't play.
Well, because he didn't play fair. He was a real, but it's a great game.
Lindy Ruff, like he was a rough player, but the Lindy part is kind of like,
Yeah. No, there's, but names, I think helps in terms of your recognition. That's why I think we've seen some athletes. Remember when in basketball we had World Be Free.
That's right. Yes.
People changed their name. Yeah.
That's right too. But probably in basketball, is it like no hockey player? I don't think's ever changed. Maybe they've changed the pronunciation of the name. Right. Some hockey players have done that.
Well, I think that's still going on. Yeah. So,
right. But the one that gets me is guy. He wants to be called Dougie Hamilton. Like his name. Most guys don't like. They may have the name Doug, and then people call him Dougie. But he actually wants to be called Dougie. Like that. They just. No.
I mean, if that's what he's been called his whole life. I
thought it was that he wanted to be called Dougie. That's my interpretation of it. I just like call me Dougie. Like James Patrick. Like he wants to be called James. He doesn't want to be called Jim. James is his proper name, and that's what he wants to be called.
Well, I mean, I think that's the usual case that people like their nicknames more than, but it's kind of what you are comfortable with. Some people don't like their name. I've met some people who were named after their father and they didn't get along with their dad, and you've heard people when you refer to him as James or Robert, you'd say, Robert's my father, I'm Bob, that kind of thing.
Right. We, Mike Allison and I, one night, many moons ago, we were at a local establishment. The team was having a couple of adult beverages, and we decided that we were going to change James Patrick's name to Jim. And it may not sound as funny, but it was hilarious. Mike went into this whole thing about in his hometown of Fort Francis, Ontario, there's this place called Big Jim Sports Campers. So he became Big Jim, and it was very funny. It was good. Trust me.
Yeah. You have to trust me. Yeah. So, one of the things, it's kind of a sad tale, but my cousin was in Vietnam. He was a sergeant. And, the way it worked in Vietnam in combat is, most of the soldiers were 18 and the sergeants were like 20, right. So everybody was just young. And, as it is in combat situations, you don't want to you're stuck with the people that you came out of basic training with, so them well, but you don't really want to meet any new guys because it hurts if they're they're wounded. So my cousin, as a sergeant, said that he would just nickname people. He didn't want to learn their names, so, and he said, it's just a horrible thing when you think about it now that I didn't want to know them. He said, and he goes, they didn't really like it. People didn't want to be nicknamed. They wanted you to know their names. So.
It's interesting. There's a scene like that in, I think it was Band of Brothers, where they talked about that too, about how the new guys would come in and the old guys wouldn't have anything to do with them. They treated them like terrible because they didn't want to get to know them, man.
Right.
So, Ellen's picking on me here after I tried to tell my funny story there. Guess you had to be there.
Yeah.
Ellen, that was good. I deserved it. Yes.
I saw your cooking show. I like it with the app. I really appreciate it. I always tell my wife that too. Clean while you cook. I like that. But I thought you were yelling at us about that. It was like, now I remember, clean while you cook.
I might get a little excited for the Sunday cooking show. I do. Yeah. I love the cooking show. Yeah.
So don't admonish us so severely, but I love the instruction. I think that's a worthy advice,
So and where it comes from, right? So a lot of people don't want to cook because they say, well, afterwards I got to clean up all the mess. But if you clean as you cook, then that's
Yeah. My wife's not a big cleaner while she cooks type person. No? She likes to cook, and then when she's done, she wants to clean it all up. So
that's interesting.
But I think I'm with you. I think the right way to do it is the way you do it. Now, when your wife's cooking in the kitchen, do you just stay out of the way?
When your wife's cooking in the kitchen, do you just stay out of the way?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, maybe in the old days I wouldn't have, because she'd probably be cooking stuff that I'd be very interested in. So, you want to be the sampler. But, now there's always a lot of, vegan, food. Although, it's interesting. Since my wife has become vegan, and I oftentimes have pick up stuff for her. By the way, it's very expensive to be a vegan. Almost everything that she cooks with is like $9.99. Like, she had me go out and get some turmeric roots when I dropped my grandkids off at the lake house, and I found them, and I found these little roots, and they're it's 2 to a package and whatever,
Right.
and they were $9.99 for those.
Really? Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
So I wonder about that, because I see the turmeric roots when I go to like H Mart, which has all that stuff as well. Like the ginger root is like $3.99 a pound. I think it is something like that. May have gone up now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're in a kind of a rural area where the lake house is. So, it's everything, I expect everything to be a little bit higher, but that just seemed too high. And any kind of spice. I mean, she gave me this thing. She wrote it down on the spice that she needed. And I said to her, there's just no way that they're going to have the spice. And, I was right. I mean, I don't even remember what it was now, but it was, so.
That's my place. Like H Mart. H Mart has everything. Well, particularly with Asian food, but they have a lot of other stuff as well. But
yeah. Well, anyway, we'll probably wrap it up here now. We're closing in on pushing toward the 40-minute mark, but we appreciate you tuning in. We'll be back next week. It's kind of the dog days here, but it's really not that far, Tom, until we start talking about training camps and, who's got a chance to win. We still got one big free agent that we have to get signed, and Nazem Kadri. There's been some rumblings that perhaps he's already agreed to a deal with the Islanders, but Lou Lamoriello, he's just not. He's kind of holding the league hostage while he sorts out how he's going to make it fit under his salary cap.
Definitely, yes.
So if you want to read me, I'm at DetroitHockeyNow.com or HockeyBuzz.com.
And if you'd like to listen to the radio version of this show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. Everybody have a great weekend. We will see you on Monday.